This is Mutcho TV live show. My name is Janvier Nahimana, and I'm with my co-host Mohammed. Today we launch Mutcho TV Town Hall, where we can learn from one another and grow. Our special guest is Halifax Mayor Mike Savage. Welcome, Mike Savage, to Mutcho TV. And how are you doing today?
Yes, welcome.
I'm doing very well, my friend. How are you doing? Sure thing. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be with you, Janvier and Mohammed. It's great to see you guys.
Great to see you too. Thank you.
My pleasure. You know, COVID has been a difficult time for everybody. There's no question about that. We've never been into something like this in my lifetime, and I'm older than you guys, so you probably haven't seen anything quite like it in years.
Never.
In Nova Scotia, it's been, I would say the impact of it has been exacerbated by other tragedies that have happened. The shooting of, an RCMP officer, Heidi Stevenson, and more than 20 other people, innocent people.
That's
There's
really
a shock.
sad.
We've lost a cyclone helicopter, crew, two of whom are Nova Scotians, and Matthew Pike and, of course, Abigail Cabro. We lost Captain Jen Casey on the Snowbirds. And then the world was rocked again with the image of George Floyd dying with a knee on his neck in Minneapolis. And as horrific as that was, it really wasn't shocking because it's happened far too often. And there's a long history of this kind of abusive behavior happening. So, and it's already, COVID is already something that has been disproportionately impacting the African American, African Canadian community, as it has also impacted other communities who are vulnerable populations, particularly our seniors. So all these things together, I think, have made us kind of fragile, to be honest with you, and made us really stop and take pause as to where we are and where we're going. Today in Halifax is a kind of an important day because the city's opening to some extent. And, we have a lot of businesses who are hurting and looking forward to supporting businesses. But it's no question, it's been a bit of a shattering time.
So that is really true. The Black community has been highly impacted by the COVID situation and then the death of George Floyd. And also we would like to take a time to send our deepest condolences to all the families that were impacted by COVID and the 20 people that were killed and shot, also as the police officer and the military corps that we lost. It was a great loss, as well as the journalists we also lost. So yes, it was definitely tough times for Nova Scotia going through COVID. But what is the plan? What is the plan for the city opening up the small businesses, the schools, to give the support that the community actually needs right now?
So we take all of our direction, of course, from public health. There are some cities, Toronto's one, that have their own public health officer. We don't in Halifax. So we take direction from the province, and we have it from the beginning of this with Dr. Strang. But I think one of the ways that the city obviously had to help was we had to keep services going like transit and police, fire, but also solid waste, garbage collection. These things can't stop in a pandemic. They may be more important in a pandemic. Parks and rec. So these things have to happen. But we've also, and I personally have been somewhat focused on how do we help individuals and businesses that need help. So people who can't afford their taxes, what are we going to do to help them? And also, when businesses do come back, and particularly on our main streets, hotels, restaurants, bars, haircutting places, all those places, craft shops, how are we going to help them? And so we've activated a team that's been looking at how do we make our communities more livable and walkable for people. So I'm in City Hall, I look down and I see Argyle Street is going to come to life shortly. And so we've been focused on doing those things. because the city's going to need some help. We had a very strong economy going into COVID, and we want to have the strong economy coming out. And it's been a very difficult period for businesses. We've never had, that I can recall, a circumstance where a public health situation has led to the closing of large parts of the economy. Normally, when there's a public health issue, one of the answers is to get out and be active, and people haven't been able to be as active because they couldn't go to parks and trails and things. So
Yes.
now that we're coming back, I think it's a positive thing for the city, but there's a lot of work yet to be done.
True. There's a lot of work to be done, and of course, as a community, we all have a role to play in it. And please, if there is any way that you think that there is something we can bring into the community, please let us know.
Thank you. Thank you.
And my next question was, coming out of this COVID situation, post-COVID, many families will be impacted financially, and also there will be people that will be impacted mental-wise. The mental health issue, which is pretty big, and now having that on top of it and everything that has happened. How is the city planning on addressing those issues and helping the people navigate those waters?
In terms of mental health in particular?
Yes, mostly, yes.
Yeah. So COVID has had a lot of impacts, certainly on physical health, but I think in many ways the mental health aspects. And when you add the fact that we've had murders and crashes and the death of George Floyd and that impact, it's made a lot of people, the word I've used and I used earlier is fragile, that it's made people very fragile. And I don't think,
Agreed.
a lot of people don't really know if what they're experiencing is normal or not. So I did a little video with Dr. Stan Kuchar, who's a mental health expert, a few weeks ago, where we tried to help to triage people. Like, first of all, if you're not feeling normal during COVID, then you are feeling normal, because everybody's feeling that way. So not to overreact, but if you are having a real hard time with the stress, there are avenues that you can use, and there are places that you can go. We know that, during COVID, it's not as if domestic violence went down, it probably went up. People are in their homes.
Yes, indeed.
Domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and those things, I think the experiences will find that went up significantly. And so one of the things the city did early on, even though we don't have a mandate on specific mandate on mental health or even housing, those are not mandates at the city, but they have to be our responsibility. We worked with the province to find suitable shelters using, for example, rec centers and even schools that weren't being used for school and rec. We used those, and they were repurposed to be homeless shelters or to be shelters for those who are vulnerable.
Great, amazing.
Particular women who are fleeing a difficult situation. You can imagine a woman who's in a situation where she is threatened or abused, and maybe has children, or even if she doesn't, but if she does, it's even worse. How bad it is normally, but then put COVID on top of that. What are the options? Where do they go? What does she do? How does she take care of her family? So it's been very important that we look at people's mental health as well as their physical health.
It is.
Through this whole time.
Would you say that there is a specific program or a special phone number to which people will be able to reach out to, or website that they'll be able to visit in?
Sure. And some of those are on the halifax.ca website, which you can also get on my website. And there are things too, like the Kids Help Phone for kids who are struggling, using the Kids Help Phone to get the advice that you need. Sometimes you just need to be told what you're feeling is not the way you normally feel, but it is the way many other people are feeling. But also there are people that need specific help and support. So people can go to the halifax.ca website, and the province has some connecting phone numbers as well.
Wonderful.
I saw some images about the rally, anti-racism rally in Halifax, and it was really amazing to see all those people from all backgrounds come together. What I found that it's important just to keep this legacy continue, because we know that people want now to make a change in the community. How can we make this just legacy continue?
Yes, keep this same energy going on, not make sure that people are not just talking about this because of the heat of the moment, but once it's over, that it's going to keep going on. It's going to be a perpetual work that we're doing into the community so that we can see it.
So I think I've given it a lot of thought because, you know, from the time that I saw that image of how George Floyd died and countless others who've died and they weren't caught on camera. This one was caught on camera, and that's why it seemed to sort of take the world as it did. It reminded me in some ways of the migrant crisis that was spurred by the young boy, Alain Kurdi, who washed ashore, I think it was in Turkey, which showed people, it was a visual image of how many people are fleeing violent and oppressive regimes throughout the world that we hadn't seen. So this image of George Floyd it's not a new thing, but it's given it a new lens. And I think it'll make a difference. And I think that, you know, for all of us, we have to talk about what we can do together, but I think we all have to look inside our hearts and say, what can I do? So in my case, as the mayor of Halifax, you know, what can I do to make a difference in the instances of anti-Black racism? This is a province that has a history of systemic racism. It's been proven. We have Black communities that have been set up outside the core of the city where they didn't have any services, and even inside the core of the city where they had you know, less resources than others in their area. And we've done some good work through our Department of Diversity and Inclusion and the elimination of street checks and things like that. But it's not enough. It's not anywhere near enough. So, you know, as mayor, what can I do and what can council do? And I think that there's a number of things we can do. Number one, a lot of attention is focused on the police. So how are we dealing with police? And I heard Dan Kinsella, who's our police chief, on the radio this morning, and he was good. And, you know, he did make the apology to the Black community for street checks, which was long overdue. But in terms of police, we need to look at, so when people talk about, you know, body cameras, instead of saying it's too expensive or it's anti-privacy, we need to look at that and say, if that helps communities feel more secure and brings them closer to respect and trust with the police, then we need to look at that. There's a saying that Joe Biden uses, which is, you know, don't talk to me about your values, show me your budget. Like, what are you actually putting resources toward? And I think as a city, we have a chance to do that. We have projects in the city, and some of them are in historical, you know, African Nova Scotian communities where at the same time as we're spending money on these major projects, a lot of people are having a hard time paying the bills. So how do we incorporate making sure that there's opportunities for people in the African Nova Scotian community? And making sure that we're listening to the community and giving the services that the community needs, because the solutions live in community. They don't live in City Hall or in the legislature and the House of Commons. They live in the community, and what politicians need to do is listen and then help to bring some of these forward. And I think that there's a challenge before all of us, and I think that this is a seminal moment. And you see where there's leadership, and a lot of the leadership is coming from cities. And then you see the President of the United States and how he looks at it. And there's a big gap, and we either learn from history or we don't. And if we don't learn from history, things are going to get a lot worse before they get a lot better. And so I take it very seriously.
Yeah.
We as immigrants, we are proud to be Holiganians because we love this city. It's really
it's a beautiful
place
city.
where we are feeling that we are at home. And the most important, just now, we want to be part of the community, participate in changes, and bring also our culture from different countries, most from Africa. So how do you see the integration for new immigrants coming here in Halifax?
Well, I think we've done a much better job in the last little while. So for a long time, I think people in Atlantic Canada were behind the curve, so to speak, on immigration, sort of thinking, well, we're doing okay. We don't need people to come here and take what we have. I think that was the attitude for a long time. And it's changed to the point now that people realize that it's a war of talent. We need immigrants, that immigrants, come here and hopefully build a better life for themselves and their family. But oh, by the way, it's also a better life for the community. And I think people get that now. Immigration has fueled the growth of Halifax. So about 10 years ago, the biggest percentage of our growth in population by a long shot in Halifax was coming from the rest of Nova Scotia. Now, the biggest growth is coming from international immigration. And that's new people coming to this country and new people coming to our city. I think things like the Connector program and the partnership has been very positive. I brought forward a motion a number of years ago now to council that we allow permanent residents to vote in municipal elections, which is something I feel very strongly about, and which the province hasn't given us the permission to do yet. But there's a lot of things that we can do to signal to people that we need you. For a long time, I think immigrants came here and they were at a disadvantage with the companies. It's an old boys network that exists in Halifax as it does in many places, but it's changed a bit now, and more companies are realizing that they have to go out and make a case to new Canadians as to why they should work with them, that there is more of a competitive nature. And last year we grew by whatever it was, 8,500, and 5,500 of that I think was international immigration. And it's good for the city. It's good for the city. And for me as mayor, when I ran in 2012, that's what I wanted to see. I don't know if we could get there, but I wanted us to be a city that welcomed the new Canadians and provided a place. I'll tell you one other thing. When I brought forward the motion to allow permanent residents to vote in municipal elections, I had a call from somebody who I knew, not well, but somebody who I knew and had supported me before, who said to me, "I will not vote for you again because you want to bring people here from other places who my son can't get a job, and you want to bring people here and they're going to get the job my son should have." And I said, you know what? The people who are born outside of Nova Scotia will create more jobs than the people who were born here. So your son has a better job opportunity from somebody who comes here from Nigeria or India or Brazil or Lebanon or anywhere else. And because I believe immigration is what drives the economy, and we need to thank the people who choose to come to Halifax. I bet you didn't know what a Haligonian was before you came to Halifax.
I agree. I did not, to be honest.
The other question I have it's not the first time I come just to share your message to the community using our knowledge in media. We have Mutcho Radio, which is now streaming, and I have recorded more than 300 interviews for people from our background, from Mi'kmaq, Nova Scotian, Acadian, Kida School. I try just to go outside in community and share messages in our community. So we know there is a project that it was on your table about Halifax Culture Link. Can you give us any feedback about this project, Culture Link in Halifax? So we want to know how our community members who are skilled in different areas like culture, entertainment, and where they can express themselves, if there is opportunity for them to grow here in Halifax.
Okay, so Culture Link across the way from City Hall, is that what you mean? The Culture Link in the old Trade Center? That's what you're talking about, Janvier?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, because I know that there was creating space for entertainment, for culture, and we want to know also if there is an opportunity for community non-profit organization to be part of that, because we have artistic expression, and we have knowledge also in multimedia. We would like to participate in that project also as we have different talent from different countries. We can bring something in our community.
Well, how about that I introduce you to the person who's spearheading the project? Because the idea of Culture Link, which the city put money into, as well as the feds and province, the idea was that that it would be a center of innovation and arts creation. It's also going to be has to make some money too. It'll be a sound stage. So, and I'll never forget walking across Grand Parade when the gentleman who was the inspiration behind it, Mark Ullman. I bumped into Mark and he asked me about who owned the building and could I put them together, and I think I was the one that put them together initially. I'll be happy to make an introduction.
That'd be wonderful, because as immigrants, there is lots of culture that comes into this country with us, and I think that would be great to give the opportunity to those immigrants to share that with the members of the community that did not get to experience such cultures.
Yeah, thank you again for opening us last year to celebrate Peace One Day, and it was really an opportunity for us immigrants to feel that we are heard by our authorities. So we came and we connected with the community. Hopefully that maybe in November COVID will go away, and we will be able to bring again community members or on Grand Parade. So thank you very much for that opportunity that we give us.
Yes, thank you.
Bring younger generation to be part of our community and also share peace message.
Yes, thank you so much.
Well, thank you both very much. It's a pleasure.
So I have another question for you. Technology today is playing a big role in most people's lives, and it drives change. It helps, and given these times we live in, there is everything that happens, and mainly, let's say, it's technology that has driven those changes. If it wasn't because of technology, we would not be able to see what happened to George Floyd, may he rest in peace, and also be able to relay that message on a non-stop basis these past days. How do you see technology moving forward, playing a big role in every plan that you may have, and how it can help us as a society moving on?
You know, I wish I was more versed in technology, because I'm not. I will tell you that, like a lot of other people, COVID has made me much more in tune with ways to communicate, Zoom and Teams and, you know, everything else that we do on a regular basis now. I'm at City Hall. I didn't know how to use the printer until last week here at City Hall. I had somebody do my printing for me, so kind of embarrassing. But I said to my staff, I said, this isn't as tough as you've made it sound. So from a personal point of view, I think technology is an enabler. And I remember a number of years ago that I went to my hometown. I was born in Belfast in Northern Ireland. And shortly after becoming mayor, I was invited to go and speak at a conference. And it wasn't until I got there that I realized it was a technology conference, Beltech, Belfast Tech. And I was asked to give the opening comments, and I get over there and realized, I get in there late in the night and I had to speak early in the morning, and I hadn't thought about that aspect. I talked a bit about where I came from and my history. And I said, you know, let me just tell you how good I am at technology. I said, I got here and I don't know how to change the time on my watch to the current time. And everybody looked at me like I was crazy. It was true. But I said, what I do know is I know what technology can do for us. Technology can do a lot of things for us economically, but technology can also be a great social project. It can enable things like democracy.
Yes.
It can enable voting. It can enable political interaction. I think it can enable equity because it's a lot easier when we're all on a screen together looking like the Brady Bunch than it is otherwise. So I think technology can be a force for good in the world. But let's remember, it can be a force as well if I'm checked for bad. I mean, social media is both good and bad. It's good in that it allows us to communicate. It can be bad in that it also can be a purveyor of hate. It can be a purveyor of feelings that you don't really mean to express, but because it's so immediate, you get people's immediate opinions. So I think technology is something we have to keep our eye on, and don't censor it so much as manage it and watch it. But technology for the city of Halifax is changing the landscape of our city. We were not a tech hub, and we are now. Things like Volta, for example, but a lot of other small startup companies, Verb Interactive and Dash Hudson and Proposify, and the work they're doing at places like Red Space. Technology allows people to do anything from anywhere if you're smart enough and quick enough. And I've been to some of these companies in Halifax who are doing work for the NFL, the Toronto Stock Exchange, Marriott Hotels, Hollywood, and they're doing it here in Halifax. And the only reason they're doing it is because of technology. So it's been a good thing for the city of Halifax. And I hope it builds equity in our communities as well as opportunity across the board.
I hope so too. I really hope so.
I have another question about younger generation. We see that, we imagine that students and different universities, the impact of COVID-19 have been very, very, very strong
tough
to them. And how the city is helping students in this time that they was not connected with the community because they were in the campuses of universities, but there is also a mental health issue and financial issue, no jobs for students. What's the plan for the municipality?
And that also includes foreign students that were not able to go back home to join their families, for example.
Yeah, and I've met with some of those folks. I've talked to some of those folks at St. Mary's, for example, who are housed at St. Mary's, couldn't go back home. And I talk regularly to the university presidents about this, and they were on a call with the Halifax Partnership not very long ago. What has to come out of this is that we continue to embrace immigration and international students. And international students can't just be a cash cow for universities where they pay differential fees. It has to be continuing to build the vibrancy of of our cities. And I think one of the things is the way that we build our city is the reflection on who we are as people. And if you build your cities for young people and provide the opportunities that young people want, young people tend to be much more open-minded, concerned about the environment around them, but not from a people point of view. I mean, I think 30, 40 years ago, when I was a kid out and about, you noticed people, and people in Halifax then who were Black or Asian or they stood out. And now one of the great things about our city is that it doesn't stand out as much now because it's much more common. I mean, I remember hearing people speak a language I didn't understand. I thought, that's great. That wouldn't have happened 30, 40 years ago. But you have to embrace, you can't just expect that students will come here and accept the things the way we always had done them. So building streets like Argyle Street where there's room for people to get out and do the things that they want to do, being sensitive to the racialized community, new Canadians, people with disabilities, and the whole attitude towards the LGBTQ plus community. I mean, young people they get past all that stuff and they just want to live together. And I think that's a great opportunity for the city, and we nurture that and support that. And Janvier, you've been to my student reception, haven't you?
Yes, I have been, yeah.
Yeah, Mohammed, you wouldn't have been to that yet?
No, I was not there.
But that to me, when I see that, and Janvier, we have music and we have our First Nations. There's a great sense of community, because I believe that cities, more than anything else, is a place where people come together. And for a long time, our communities, you had rich people living here and middle-income people living here and low-income people living here. The city is actually the place, if we build it correctly, where everybody can live together, rich and poor, Black and white, regardless of your ability, regardless of your age. There's a place for everybody in a city that's constructed the right way. And when I see international students, it excites me that they want to be here.
Yes,
we are almost we are almost at the end of our show. We know that all people come visiting Halifax, what they say, the beautiful Nova Scotia.
Yes.
And we enjoy to sometimes when they have time to go on seaside parks. So invite people. We need to see people coming again in Halifax and enjoy the welcoming people here in Halifax, and also enjoy our seaside and downtown of Halifax.
Yes. We have
Please
a beautiful
invite people
waterfront.
come again to Halifax.
Well, they do. You know what? One of the things we're really missing this year is the festivals, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
you know, we had the African festival, the Lebanese festival, the Greek festival, the Indian festivals, the celebrations of, you know, Diwali. I did a Zoom meeting to celebrate Eid, the end of Ramadan, with the Islamic community. It was online. But we're missing that coming together of people where we can celebrate the culture and the food and the history and the lessons of everybody. And that's one of the things I'll really miss this summer is this, we're not going to be able to do that as much. So we have to make sure that we continue to do everything we can to bring people together and look forward to getting together in person next year.
Yes, we'll be really looking forward to that. Once the city opens up and all the activities begin again, I think things will be beautiful, seeing people coming together. And after all that we went through, seeing all those Nova Scotia strong brings us together as a strong community. And I believe it. I really hope that everyone is willing to put that work forward. Just a last question, if you don't mind. I know that we already took a lot of your time. Concerning the Black agenda, how do you plan on helping pushing Black-owned businesses or create more Black-owned businesses in the city of Halifax?
Well, I think when I talk about the economic opportunities, so we have to look at what opportunities exist in African, Nova Scotian owned and operated companies, for example, and how the city can play a role in that. So, you know, Councillor Lindell Smith has a motion on social policy and the social lens that we look at everything. We've looked before at things like, how do you buy local as a city? And you have to be careful because all those technology companies I talked about, they're exporting and they're creating jobs here, but they're doing work elsewhere. We don't want other cities to shut down our companies that export. But I think, and this could be the same with the Indigenous community as well. When we do projects like the Mi'kmaq Friendship Center or the Cogswell redesign, we need to look at the history of those areas and how do we use the Indigenous, whether it's First Nations or whether it's African Nova Scotian. Are we employing people? Are we using their minds and supporting their families when we do some of these projects? And it's going to require change in how we look at things. And I think we have to be prepared to embrace that change and recognize that there may even be some legal aspects to it that we have to overcome as well. I think we're in a vortex, a different time, and
yes.
So it has to be we have to look at things a little differently and forget about all the wonderful things that we think we've all done. Hasn't been enough.
Yes, and let's keep the conversation going. We really appreciated your time today, Mayor Mike. We really thank you for taking this time and giving us the opportunity to ask you these questions.
It's always a pleasure to be on Mutcho Radio with you guys. Good to see you, Mohammed, and Janvier. How long are you in Canada now?
For me, it's 5 years in Canada, and I enjoy Halifax.
Yeah, well, we enjoy you. Thank you guys very much.